Hi there, Rob Zacny for IGN here. I just reviewed Planetary Annihilation, the new planet-smashing real-time strategy game from Uber Entertainment. Right from its name, you can tell that Planetary Annihilation is operating in the tradition of games like Total Annihilation and Supreme Commander. It's got the rate-based economy, the gigantic scale, and the emphasis on macro gameplay. In other words, games like this are all about managing a huge economy and production pipeline, and they de-emphasize tactical maneuvering with individual units. Brute force tends to carry the day. Planetary Annihilation adds a new twist by setting the action on a series of planets and moons spinning around a solar system. It's a neat idea, and it's one that I was really excited about back when Uber put this game on Kickstarter. But now that I've had a chance to put it into practice, it actually creates a whole bunch of headaches that Uber never quite figured out a way to solve. For one thing, the map stops being this contained 2D space and turns into this sprawling solar system where most of the territory is just empty and unusable nothingness. It's kind of a needless pain to navigate. The same goes for the planets themselves. As you pull the camera farther back, these tiny little cartoon planetoids curve away from you with the horizon blocking your view. So at any one time, you can only see maybe 25% of the territory on one planet. Now, try managing two simultaneous fights on two different planets and staying on top of production, which could be happening elsewhere on those planets or across the solar system. And when you couple that with that restricted view, it's a pretty daunting and even exasperating managerial workload. It doesn't help that the interface just isn't good enough to stand up to this kind of complexity. There's a clever picture-in-picture mode that makes it easier to keep your eye on two things at once, but jumping between multiple planets and getting your bearings is just way too hard. Nor does the game prompt you when you have an idle worker or idle factory, which is pretty frustrating in a game that's all about production. That's a pretty standard RTS feature these days, and it's really surprising to see it left out of Planetary Annihilation, but that's kind of the thing about Planetary Annihilation. Everything just feels a little half-baked. For instance, you can't save your game. Planetary Annihilation matches can last well over an hour, and some will drag on for a lot longer. But unlike in epic RTS games like Sins of a Solar Empire, you can't preserve the battle to continue it later. You either finish or you abandon the game, which means that a lot of your best, most competitive matches will start to feel like they're holding you hostage. I found that kind of weird because it meant that when the game was at its best, it was also being a huge inconvenience. There is a single-player mode called Galactic War, which seems like another thing that was sort of half-abandoned by Uber. You start conquering a galaxy system by system, but there's no opposition. It's a strategy layer, but there's no opponent. There's no AI pushback. You just move to a different system, fight a battle, and move on to the next. If you lose your commander, the war's over and you've lost. There are some interesting twists, but again, I'm not sure they work as well in execution as in theory. First, you collect your technology as you go through the map. So you start out just being able to build basic vehicles, for instance, and nothing else. But maybe later you'll collect basic air tech or advanced robots. That'd be a clever way to ease people into the game, especially since there's no tutorial in this game, unless you count kind of a worthless low-res YouTube video as a valid instructional implement, which I really don't. But the real problem with Galactic War is that you can only carry a handful of techs at a time. If you want to take something new, you have to give up an older tech. Now that could, in theory, be a really interesting, tough choice, but the problem is that RTS games aren't generally modular this way. The way this ends up feeling is it's like you're fighting battles with one hand tied behind your back, while you're also handcuffed to a chair and blindfolded. The AI doesn't seem to know what to do in these situations either, and in the Galactic War missions at least, will often just march its commander off to die. It's a real change from the skirmish mode, where the AI is very competent, a very capable opponent, but in the Galactic War mode, it just seems to have no idea what to do with the limitations it's working under. But Planetary Annihilation's fatal problem is that it never manages to justify itself, especially when you consider that Supreme Commander Forged Alliance is $15 on Steam. That's half the price of Planetary Annihilation, and it's a much better, more user-friendly game. Planetary Annihilation has one big new idea, and not much in the way of execution. That's why I'm giving it a 4.8. It just does too few things well, and there are too many good options if you're looking for an epic-scale real-time strategy game. That does it for me in Planetary Annihilation. For more on real-time strategy games, stick with IGN.